the provocative title, which is AI and the Death of Trademarks. So let me sort of answer the question by saying I don't think we're anywhere near the death of trademarks. It's an exaggeration, but something interesting is going on. So let's try and figure out what that is. Let's start again with something that's being covered really well in the slides and presentations already. We protect trademarks because they speak to consumers. And trademarks, we call this manner of speaking, these modes of speaking, trademark functions. We know that trademarks have an origin function. They tell consumers where the product comes from. That's a guarantee in turn of the quality of the product. It's consistent from the same origin, so you can trust the quality of the product. And then you start stacking all kinds of more commercially valuable functions on that. Image, advertising, sort of communication, all of that stuff. So it stacks on the origin and quality functions. The Supreme Court just reiterated it in Skycake, and again in Iconics, the Supreme Court referred to the functions of trademarks again as well. So the thinking here is, the early thinking is, if AI is beginning to assist people in buying things and beginning to give them advice on what they buy and shaping their decisions and getting to the point where it can make their decisions for them. So what happens to trademarks as speaking devices in this new context query? And people have started thinking about it already. You can see the provocation in the title on the lower left, which is AI and the Death of Trademarks. A similar kind of theme is explored by Christine Haid-Fadi in Trademarks in an Algorithmic World. Removing the human from trademark law, you again see where that paper's going, and trademarks in the age of automated commerce. What happens to consumer autonomy and choice is what that paper's asking again. So they're all circling around the same concern, and that concern is the vanishing, the diminishing trademark in consumer decision making. So Mike Greenberg's thought experiment is, if the AI directly obtains all the information about origin and quality and features and how the product performs directly, and the trademark used to speak and do this work, then that renders trademarks superfluous. And if our whole structure of trademark law is built around valuing trademarks because they speak all of these things, then why do we value trademarks? What's left to protect? That's the sort of existential crisis that he's throwing up there. Trademarks function by simplifying information. Human cognition is limited, so trademarks are these useful, compressed heuristic devices, almost like price is a device in markets. Price compresses everything about a product for economists and gives people one signal, and you're supposed to be able to react to price and work accordingly. So trademarks are supposed to do a similar thing. They're a shortcut for all this information. But hypothetical AI is not limited in the same way that human cognition is. It can root around, it can dig up the information, it can actually put all of this together, and it doesn't have to pass through the trademark keyboard to do that. So it can get all of the price, manufacturer, sellers, detail information, consumer reviews, professional reviews, all of that information around and through different channels. So the role of trademarks potentially diminishes that. And if the role of trademarks diminishes, to what extent do we need trademark protection in the far future? And Christine's argument is similar. Search cost theory no longer accurately describes the functions of trademarks, reducing consumer search costs. The AI helps them do that anyway. So they have these digital alternatives. What does that leave in terms of trademarks' purpose, its rationale, its role? I'm a parent, my kids are getting older, I can see myself becoming redundant. I offer to take them to a movie, one of them muttered, I'd love to see it, but not with you. The downside is welcome to surveillance capitalism. The social is being mined and commodified, goodbye privacy, hello manipulation, not all good stuff. Lots of other stuff going along with that, but that's the shift that's clearly happening. And algorithms influence consumer purchase decisions in a few different ways. So predictive analytics anticipate choices and try and anticipate what you want and then steer you in that direction. Customized digital marketing then curates and presents a certain subset of things to you as a choice. And they base this on previous purchases, as we've already heard from the first presentation, Cyrus' presentation, customer ratings, browsing history, information about complementary products, and who else is buying this? Who else is interested? Prince Harry's jumper, that sort of romper, the play suit, all of that as well. So what other people are looking for, all of that starts sort of pushing choices towards you. And ultimately, we're getting to the point where AI might be making the choice directly for you. So if the first stages are about the narrowing of choices and the curating of choices, the final stages, let's just do the choice for you. we'll handle that bit as well. And really what happens to trademarks at that level. So in 2017, colleagues started thinking about it. There's a colleague I read a lot. I read all of her papers. Her name is Niva Elkin-Corrit. She's been thinking about platform. She's been thinking about technology and consumption for a while. So she co-authored a paper called Algorithmic Consumers in 2017. She started talking about digital agents. And you're opening up yourself to manipulation because we know that the algorithms are not to be trusted or taken at face value. Even with the best tool in the world, there will be biases and they will be skewed, and then they gradually transition to machine learning over time. But the AI in the back end then pushes the results forwards. From Netflix to Amazon to eBay, it's the AI doing all of the work. So these early keyword decisions are already the first brush of trademark law with AI and how it presents results and how the platform itself manages the results themselves, the back-end software. And we come back to that towards the end. But the overall shift is in online retailing. Chatbots help you find out what you need. Recommendation agents and virtual assistants which sort of try and help you identify what you really need something for. Search engagement, you've got robot shopping assistants. You've got smart technology helping you with your search and choice management, smart shopping carts. And then you've got other things like supply chain and inventory optimization that's not directly relevant for trademark law. Pricing algorithms are for competition law as well. And this is already live, already happening. You already see AI enter the space here. So what is the thesis, therefore, underlying these papers? How consumers access information online is changing because technologies increasingly find ways to directly access product information, not through the trademarks, and then present that information to consumers. So the funnel effect is happening through there. And then it's also shaping decisions, if not entirely making decisions as well. So is the space for brands to convey information and influence purchasing decisions shrinking or vanishing? That's really, I think, what these papers are saying. So let's look at two things to challenge this presumption. Are brands vanishing or do they continue to be relevant? So let's look at whether brands still matter to people. And the easy answer is yes. And let's look at some evidence about why it may be too early to say that trademark law is dead, but let's still look at the journey we're going on. So the first pushback is brands still matter. And brands still matter because if you look at the data, the majority of sales are still offline. There's very interesting data regularly on a monthly basis from the Office of National Statistics, the ONS. It shows the trend going up over time. Anyone want to guess why there's a spike in the middle there where people do a lot more online shopping? And the pain on your faces tells me you know the answer. That's the COVID sort of period there where everybody's stuck at home. And then it dips down, but you can see over time it's going up. So brands don't seem to be going anywhere just yet. And that's the data that sort of suggests brands are key components of the products themselves. So because you love a product, the taste actually changes. You know the apocryphal story in blind taste tests, people prefer Pepsi. But the moment you put Coke on it, people love the taste of Coke more. And that's a clear example of the brand mattering and influencing the product as well. Many brands are available goods. They sort of dispute the law of price, sort of in economics. The higher the price, the more demand for the product goes up, as opposed to normal sort of price dynamics. For wearable goods, luxury brands, high status brands are classic examples. You value them for these reasons, and so therefore you have that relationship with brands as well. And then you've got hedonic products. They're not utilitarian, they're not your staplers, your water bottles, your stationery. They are things you buy like the gourmet meal, the fancy fashion product. You buy them because the process of making that choice and how you connect with that product as well is really important to you. So these are all reasons to suggest that brands will continue to matter to consumers. So brands aren't disappearing, but the manner in which shopping for them is being mediated is certainly changing. And that's going to be more interesting to look at. So is the average consumer changing as a legal subject is the question that we're left with. And the answer emerging seems to be the AI is not entirely taking over, but it's certainly entering the picture more and more. So we don't have a classic human unaided consumer, at least now for now in many contexts. And it's increasingly likely as we move more online to use their phones more when they're shopping, that we're going to have hybrid AI consumer rationality in the future. So what I'm looking at is a direction of travel. I'm not looking at an endpoint. I'm not saying we're here or there. I'm trying to look at where things are going. And I think where things are going is an increasing reliance on this kind of technology when we're making our decisions. So if we have this to help us or bamboozle us or sort of skew us, what are we supposed to do with trademark law's construct of the average consumer? That's going to be interesting to look at. Having said that, there is a possible future where the AI does everything, and you're starting to see some use cases where that emerges. We've heard a lot about AI agents in the recent past, and the classic example is, I want to book a holiday here, please do everything for me. You give the AI agent a task, and then you see if it actually works to do that. They are algorithmic systems which can chain a series of decisions together or a series of tasks together, actually go online, kind of search for stuff, compare prices, do a series of sequential things, and finally book something for me, or actually get a real world effect at the end of it. So they're taking decisions on behalf of consumers. This is an example from Amazon. Alexa can now take actions on the web. And you're sort of wondering whether this is going to be something we see in the retail space. You're also seeing certain platforms like supermarkets offering versions of these agents where you just say, I want to make tacos tonight, chicken tacos tonight, generate a list of ingredients for me, pop them into my shopping basket, and buy it for me. And just for convenience, you can see people starting to use this as well, where you completely delegate the decision to the AI. And this narrows choice because the AI agent is making all of your decisions for you. So where are we on this journey of adoption? So the first pushback to the thesis was, well, people still love brands and they're going to go back to brands. Brands aren't dead yet. Then the second sort of concern comes from, but in certain scenarios, it looks like AI is taking more and we're ceding decisions to AI. So here, are there speed bumps in AI taking over is really what I'm going to look at. And what I'm really asking is, do consumers trust AI enough to give up these decisions to them? Because consumers tend to value their autonomy. So what are the circumstances in which consumers are happy to say, right, you make the decision, I'm going to completely give up, I'm not going to be a control freak, and I'm going to be happy with the decision that you make. So will consumers utilize this technology? Even if this technology exists, when are consumers going to make use of it? Is the second set of questions. Where are we on this journey of adoption? The starting point in the literature is autonomy is really important to consumers. And that's been tested and sort of confirmed time and time again in a range of consumer and marketing studies where people have looked at this. So there's a good recap in this paper in 2024. And they define autonomy as the capacity to be one's own person and to live one's own life according to the reasons and motives that are taken as one's own. So your own reasons for doing things, not the product of manipulation or external forces. And that's what it means to be independent. Given that autonomy is valued, what's different about AI? And the reason we're asking this is because no decision is purely autonomous. You may have had a recommendation from a friend, a sibling, you may have read a review, something would have changed your mind or influenced you to buy something. So given that there's no pure autonomy existing in the world, what's different about AI as yet another factor that influences or changes our autonomy? Well, technology isn't neutral. As we know, it has these mediating effects. So what's different about AI is it affects our preference formation, the starting process of how you go about deciding what you're going to be looking for and what you're going to be choosing and narrowing down on. It starts affecting those. It affects your competence and the authenticity of your decision potential. So competence relates to the capabilities to enable one's governance and compliance with one's own preferences, which is really saying, I have my preferences and do I have the capacity to go back and act on them? So do I have access to relevant information? Can I think properly about that information and make decisions? And if non-neutral technology is this structuring condition where users just delegate their competence and say, you make the decision for me, you're starting to lose competence. We're seeing this with people who've used ChatGPT a lot to come up with answers to questions. We're seeing this in the university space. You're actually seeing a diminishing sort of degree of competence in thinking through stuff, formulating questions. The quality of their prompts goes down over time. So an over-reliance on this kind of technology attacks your competence to do things. And also authenticity in terms of something that reflects your values as opposed to what everybody else is buying and is interested in at the moment. That's the other danger with what AI is doing. And these are two core values which speak to autonomy as well. So the technology is so convenient that these are the two things that are put at risk by it, and that's different about AI. And lots of research confirms that autonomy matters for consumers. It's the foundation for our personal. We can sort of act on our own. And because we act on our own, we have moral responsibility, character, ethics, all of that stuff rests on the ability to act on one's own reasons. And there's benefits. So it's not just that there's a legal or a moral basis for saying you're responsible for your own actions. There's a psychological benefit to each of us by thinking, well, we've made a choice and we're happy with the choice. So we're happy with the fact that we made the choice. So consumers thinking they've made their own decisions is itself something that makes them happy. And that's an important sort of factor of autonomy as well. There's a sense of agency, a heightened feeling of competence, and greater levels of positive emotion or affect. There's more utility from consumption if you worked really hard to find something. The really good deal, you look really hard to find this deal. It makes you really happy. You appreciate the product as well. And psychologically, free choices bolster the positive features of the product you chose. Because you made the choice, you're willing to look at the good stuff and not the bad stuff, and you therefore enjoy the product even more. So humans making decisions matters, and AI's taking away those decisions. But in certain situations, so you would think that human beings would resist autonomy stealing AI in all circumstances. But there are certain boundary conditions where people are happy to give up control and let the AI take over. So Pryke at Otterbrain had a very interesting set of insights from this paper. They do a survey I'll come talk to in a minute. But they explore perceptions of high versus low AI autonomy. And they say the higher the autonomy of the AI as opposed to the human being, the more the sense of powerlessness and the lower the purchase intentions of the human being. So the more the AI says, I got this, relax, the less people are likely to buy and the less happy they feel about that decision. So greater AI autonomy does not add value for consumers who want to retain some degree of control or ask the AI for an explanation for autonomous action. So that's generally the sort of sense of it. We're going to now jump across here. They decided to test that. They asked consumers whether they would be happy to cede control to an AI to buy a high-spec, high-end TV for them. So there were two settings. The AI suggests that the time to buy that TV once you've fed in your preferences, when the potential savings are higher. So the AI says, this is the time, the best deal, now's the time to buy. You have to click the button, I just told you this is the right time. Or once everything is so clear, the AI just buys the TV on your behalf. If you've set the preferences strongly enough, let the AI make the decision on your behalf. And despite the fact that INTVs are quite complex, and that's the reason why they chose this part, lots of different variables to try and sort of balance out, consumers were still not willing to do this. They were much happier doing that and saying, you pride me, but I will still make the choice. And that's the general finding. The one exception to that general finding is Black Friday. If it's a Black Friday kind of deal, then oh my God, buy it now, hurry while stocks while just AI, just do it. Like, you can do it. And that's the Bumdick condition, when you actually say, at this point, I'm willing to cede to the AI to get you the best deal because scarcity enters the picture. So what the research is bringing to show is autonomy is not just a theoretical value. In surveys and experiments, consumers actually care about autonomy. But there are certain ways in which to present choices that allows the AI to do much of the heavy lifting. And in some circumstances, consumers are happy to let the AI do all of the heavy lifting. And that's where we are in terms of the early experimental results. There is consumer resistance to adoption, and there's Osari and Rossi's paper sort of explores this as well. And they look at the difference between AI recommender systems, which still leave consumers in the driving seat, and autonomous shopping systems. I got to pause here. These guys are marketing scholars. That's a hell of an acronym they choose. They can't give it chosen it deliberately here. I mean, they could have gone for autonomous buying systems, which is ABS, which is a lot nicer. But they went for AS, and now they got to live with the fact that you still see their paper instead of AS. So I thought even automated recommendation systems wouldn't be much better. So it gets us too close to this. But that's their label, so that's what we've got to work with. So the first still recommends, leaves a set of choices to consumers. The second is much more determinative, and the AI does much more of the work here. And they found that consumers prefer the former to the latter along two dimensions. To the extent that the AI narrows the choices to consideration sets, the more narrow the set, the lack of an explanation about why a results list or a set of choices has been generated, the less likely consumers are to buy into it. And the more the AI just presents a final decision or says, I bought it for you, the less engaged consumers are. Whereas the more the AI tries to engage the consumer in the purchasing decision, do you like it? Do you want me to go back? What preferences do you have? And try to engage the consumer in that kind of purchasing decision, the more consumers will buy in and work with the AI. So anything like the Internet of Things, shipping then shopping, let the fridge make the decision for you, consumers are less likely to adopt the app, to use the software. They just won't do it. They won't buy into it and won't take it up. So the delegation of purchasing tasks, which restricts choice and decision dimensions of autonomy, reduces the likelihood of AI adoption. So what this literature is beginning to show is the spiffy tech is there, but consumers are hesitant, there's friction, there's speed bumps, they're simply not going to use it unless the conditions are right. And that is one of the reasons why I'm saying we're going to end up with a hybrid AI human consumer as the most likely scenario at the end of this process. So the previous recommendation system findings said, the more you increase the ability of the user to interact with the system, the more positive evaluations you have of the system, the more you you allow inputs like your preferences, revising your preferences, the more people buy in, the more you give people options saying, okay, now these are the options you generated for me based on my preferences. Show me what other people are buying in the same ballpark. People are happier to go with that. Say, here's another set of choices that you can look at. An interesting set of findings says, okay, let's go right to the root of this. Why do you really need this part? What's the inches that you as a human being are trying to scratch? What do you really want out of this? And let's start with your reasons for buying it, not just the tech specs or the product specs. Let's look at your life and how you live your life and why you want to buy this product. And we will dig more into that. The more consumers are happy to talk to the AI. Whereas the new systems, which completely take away the intro, there's less of a buy-in with one exception again. Where there is a strong identification with a task and the AI helps you with that task, you are happy to hand over to the AI. So the experiment they used is a running app, and the running app gives you recommendations, direct recommendations or direct purchases for running shoes. And they found if people thought the app is good and the app understands their running needs, they're happy to delegate the purchase of running shoes to the app. Why? Because it gives them more time to run. And they trust the app. They think the app gets why running is important. So we're happy to then hand over and let the app do the buying of the shoes itself. So there's a way into that AI making the decision where they trust the app, where there's that identification of the task that the app dumps them with, they're willing to do that handing over. So what's the direction of travel here? People are looking at to almost that choice architecture nudge type thinking. People are starting to look at what are the features of AI that will encourage consumers to either engage closely with it or in certain circumstances hand over decision making to AI. So there is definitely resistance to a complete handover. The more choice autonomy you give consumers, the more control autonomy around the choices in general. So this is within the choices. This is the overall structure of choices. The happier they are to work with the AI. For certain kinds of purchases, utilitarian purchases, basic stuff, your toothpaste, your shampoo, things you buy on a recurrent basis, you're happy to let the AI do it for, especially if it's a recurrent purchase or something we've already said. So they calculate it monthly, they think of where you're going to run out, the AI does it for it. Hedonic purchases, consumers are much more willing to hold back control and say, I'm happy for you to recommend, but I want to make the final decision myself. And the more a choice is going to be about the consumer's unique preferences, and something style related would be a piece of very striking furniture, a piece of clothing that's very sort of unique and bespoke to you. The more you want to hold up control to that as a consumer, the less willing you are to hand over that to the AI. So there's strong resistance to AI recommenders there as well. And the surrender does happen when there's an identity relevant purchase like the running shoes and you trust the ad, where there's the Black Friday conditions of scarcity, right? The price is right, you just do it. It was routine or low stakes utilitarian purchases. And surprisingly, for high complexity decisions, consumers don't want to hand over to the AI. You would think if it's a very complex, technical, expensive product, that's where you really want all the algorithmic help that you could get. But even there, consumers say, no, we still want to be in the final driving seat and make the decision ourselves. So it's a mixed picture that emerges in terms of when that surrender to the AI happens. And that's why I'm thinking that where we're going to end up is in certain sales contexts, online sales in particular, you're going to have an AI assisted consumer. And trademark law is going to have to start wondering what to do with that AI-assisted consumer. So that's the direction of travel. It's not the death of trademarks. It's not the AI doing everything. It's an emerging middle ground where we have this kind of conversation between AIs and human beings, especially in the online retail space. Given this is where the technology and the social context seems to be going, is there an immune system response on trademark law to say, well, there are two sorts of situations you can imagine. One is the funneling. So if the AI is reducing all of the choices out there to the 5 it finally recommends to the consumer, what happens to the other 300 good brands which have just been shut up with that decision and blocked off? Is there anything within trademark law that helps with that funneling? And my sense is the answer is no. If anything, that's a competition law problem. That's an AI Act problem. That's some other piece of legislation which says when you're presenting results, you have to be fair and transparent and sort of produce results which are actually designed to help consumers and not skewed. But that funneling to make certain brands invisible and present only a subset of brands, I don't think trademark law can do anything above that. But once you present results, that's where trademark law can bite. And that takes us back to all of the cases that we looked at in the presentations here. The Samsung cases, the Lush cases, keyword advertising cases. It also takes us to things like post-sale confusion. So what are the multiverses of legal futures for online retail where AI is working with human beings to have this hybrid AI human consumer? Google Fronts told us we're not really allowed to look at the back end of how these platforms use toads to connect it to certain results. The presentation of those results matters. Cases like Lush push back against that slightly to say what happens at the back end, including the drop-down menus and how you type things down, that matters. But if you're too overzealous with trademark law, you're then not going to appreciate, as Sahara pointed out, that the algorithm doesn't think fully like a consumer. It sometimes uses Lush as a category word for bath bombs and says, if you're looking for Lush, you're probably looking for bath bombs. What's the best I can do, which I have in my cupboard? Let me show you what I've got. If you walk into a shop and you say, do you have X brand? The shopkeeper will say, no, but I got Y and Z. Would you be interested? And it's that kind of response. So when you're looking at how AI works at the back end to present choices, there may be lots of bias and skewing happening there, but that might be a competition law problem or an AI Act problem or some other area of law's problem to settle and fix. But I'm not sure trademark law's got the tools to step in and say, present 4,000 results on everybody's brand equally, because I don't think it can do that. So it is a problem, funneling is a problem, but I'm not sure we can do anything in the back end. The front end, in terms of how results are presented, we can talk more about that. Should it mean that we got a weaker or a modified likelihood of confusion test online? So an AI-supported consumer does potentially have perfect recollection and all the information she needs at her fingertips and ways of cross-checking, am I on the right product? Am I sure? Does the Amazon landing page give me all the context? And that's what we saw in Iconics. They couldn't prove point-of-sale confusion because the context made it very clear that it was a Dream Pair shoe and not an Iconics shoe, which is why they had to move to post-sale confusion. So really I'm saying if Iconics represents a direction of travel, then do we slide from the second bullet point to the fourth bullet point, was stronger trademark law offline in terms of post-sale confusion. The in-between bullet point is bullet point number 3. Do we just switch from likelihood of confusion over to dilution and say trademark law is also about protecting brand owners against unfair competition? And if the recommendation comes up with something that you disagreed with, then maybe a dilution claim will get you further along, since consumers have plenty of information and know exactly what they're buying. They're not confused. But in pushing the substitute product with the similar brand, the knockoff, the imitation, something that's close, you as the app or you as the platform are guilty of supporting dilution, supporting free riding. It's hard to run a confusion claim unless it's post-sale, but you can still run a dilution type claim at the point at which the app is pushing something towards you. And that's worth thinking about. And finally, does it take us more towards post-sale confusion? And I'm going to end by sounding like an ingrate and saying that, and I'm going to be uninvited from the drinks after this, so we'll get dirty looks from people sitting in the first few rows, because I'm not a fan of post-sale confusion. I think what it does is, it does what the court picked up in Adidas versus Von Braun. It takes you away from being a purchaser and being a passerby at the street. You say, hey, is that, maybe that's a really spiffy Adidas outfit. I didn't know they were so low, whereas actually it's a Von Braun kind of outfit, free advertising for Adidas. why I think post-sale confusion is problematic is because when the consumer's thinking most carefully when she's putting her hand in her pocket and putting her hand in her bag, her wallet, getting ready to pay. And that's the way the test has been designed. There's an old case about Picasso and Picaro, which goes up to the Court of Justice, and the court says, if people are walking past on the road and they see a car whiz past, that's the wrong time to judge, likelihood of confusion. Because they're just passing by, they're not thinking in consumer mode. And if you're wondering, I think this is that. If you're really confused and you think it's that, then you just think you've seen the genuine product and you go and buy the genuine product, it's not a problem. Post-sale confusion, I struggle to connect a meaningful form of harm with. And I think you've got other tools to address problems. So if it's a shoddy product with a very similar sign, then take it to a tarnishment target that say the sign is so similar that it's going to remind people of the original. There's a mental link and it's frayed and the threads are up and it's falling apart, and that's going to tarnish the value of the original and run the tarnishment target. But I think the post-sale confusion argument is going to make you find confusion on the basis of wonderment when people are just passers-by, and that's my concern with it. And I went on record in a book I wrote with Ilana Fima on the likelihood of confusion test a while ago. So I'm just sticking to my guns, but I think it's very productive to be on the wrong side of the Supreme Court decision here because it gives me lots to write about, and that's my South plans. So once again, thank you for this terrific opportunity, the amazing sort of set of slides that preceded it, and thank you very much for listening. Thank you.